Hi everyone, and welcome to another real-time coloring video. We're going to talk about matching pattern papers with your Copic colors. If you want to see the card making versions of this video with the sped up coloring, there will be links in the description down below, up in the right corner and at the end of the video. But let's jump into this. This is Venora the Wizard, and I'm using the staff and crown from Alwina the Good Witch. More on that actually on the card making tutorial. So I am going to match this pattern paper. It is from the Cream and Sugar pattern paper pack by Doodlebug Designs. And the way I match my paper is I use the Sandy Walnut hexagonal Copic chart. I really do recommend it. If you haven't picked it up, do. I then use a piece of cardstock that is the same piece of cardstock or kind of cardstock that I'm using for my image that I'm going to color, and then I go through different greens and look at them. Now Copics can kind of change over time. This is a couple of months old chart, so I always go through them and kind of color up on the chart until I choose which pens to use. I then kind of pick out my neutrals, my skin colors, my pink colors. I also picked out the browns or the hair colors. All of these are actually based on how I colored Alwina, because I wanted Venora to have a very similar color scheme, and this is all the colors I'm using for this image. Actually, I'm not using the darkest of the teals, but yeah. So to match the pattern paper, I picked out some blue-greens. I'm starting off with the blue-green quadruple zero. This is a very light blue, but I wanted to have a very light and soft and airy feeling of these clothing. So it's a very light blue, and this is also the reason why I cover all of her with this blue before I'm going in with any other colors. And that is because, as I said previously, Copics are translucent. They are translucent based on the amount of pigment versus the blending solution that is in the pen. And this pen is super light, and I don't want it to be as light as it is from the first layer. So by adding multiple layers on top of each other, the pigments will stack. However, it is easier to see that change if you let the ink dry or dissipate, the alcohol dissipate out of the ink before you go over with the next layer, because then if you draw wet on wet, it will go deeper into the paper, while if you draw on dry, it will lay on top of the paper much more. So you just let it dry in between, and then you can get pretty good layers actually by layering these very light pens. So I started with the BG quadruple zero because it is a very light blue tone, and I couldn't find a bluish green. This is actually a little bit too blue to what I really wanted, but I didn't have any lighter blue greens that was actually more green, so this is what I chose. You can actually use the G00 or the G000. However, in my case, I felt that was a little bit too green on the other hand, and I'd rather have it go too blue than too green. Just as I did with the witch, I'm actually using the same blues on all of the stones in the spire and the crown as on the clothing that she is wearing. And I'm super sorry about my voice. I've been doing like voice recordings all day, so I'm about to lose it. Hopefully it will stay with me for 25 more minutes. Also, it's like 30 degrees hot outside and we don't have AC, so I'm burning up. That's why I'm super dry in my throat also. Anyhow, the color that actually based the whole set of color scheme for this was the BG45. The BG45 was the color that actually matches the best with the pattern paper. And usually when I choose a color like that for what matches best, I usually pick the mid color to be the color that matches on scale, because shadows you can always go a little bit bluer or purplish, and lights you can always go a little bit towards the yellow side, so in this case a little bit greener. However, I didn't want to go very much darker than the BG45, so this time around I actually used that as my shadow. Then I went in with the BG10, which is a very minty green. However, with the BG quadruple 0, which is much more bluer, when you're layering them on each other, you actually get something that is more close to BG45. So don't be afraid to layer color. Layer color can actually be extremely efficient if you want to use this. Also, this is something that some people do. There are certain colors, Copic colors, that are a little bit way too big step in between. I think BG70 and BG72 is one of those. That is, the BG70 is extremely light and the BG72 is a bigger step, so if you try to blend them it can be a little bit spotty, which it does when you have too much blending solution in something that you blend. But many designers that actually work and like using this buys empty Copic markers, and then they buy the refills and then they fill them 50-50 with the BG70 versus the BG72. And you can do that with any color. So if you have any kind of color that you feel that you would use a lot, that you want to blend, you can do that in an empty marker together with the refills. Now in my case I usually just blend on the paper because I pick new color schemes all the time. This is a thing. I don't have like favorite color schemes. Well, I have some default ones when I'm not feeling like looking for good combinations that I just pick out. My red one is one of those. However, usually I do try to pair the colors somehow, and with like pattern papers or similar, and then I will go in, take my little piece of a marker paper and I blend on that to kind of figure things out. Sometimes though it could be good to know that blending in small scale and blending in bigger scales, it's a little bit different. So blending in small scale can actually blend better than in bigger scales, and vice versa. It all depends on how moist your pens are. When it is for a smaller scale, the moistness is very key. So I would always try to color on other images also. Also, a tip is, if you have something that you feel that isn't your strong suit, say coloring a specific thing, do that first on the character, so that in case it doesn't work out, there's Leia. Leia's a little cuddly kitty that wants to be in my lap. Anyhow, if it doesn't work out, you can always throw the image out and redo it. I did skin at the end very often a period of time because I just wasn't comfortable in how I did the skin. Now I feel a lot more comfortable how I do skin. And by the way, Zoe has some awesome how to color skin tutorials that you really should look up. It is ebooks and it is on, like, you work with your own, with yourself. But here's the thing, you can always come into the Facebook group, ask questions there, because you both have us DT members there, but Zoe is also there, and she's just happy about answering any questions or helping with anything that has to do with those. So yeah, if you want to really learn those things, those are awesome. or you can watch my videos. I don't know how much you learn, but hopefully you learn something. Hopefully. I'm hoping that you do that anyway. So in this case, talking about the blue-greens colors, I'm very much thinking about how the shadows would lay and try to do really good blends, because the BG45 and the BG10 doesn't really blend that well, and neither does the BG10 and the BG quadruple zero, because they're really big steps between all of them. But I try. I really try, and having that it is kind of a small stamp or small details on the stamp actually helps. It makes it a little bit easier. I don't know if this specific color scheme would have worked so great on one of the kind of big flowy dresses where you have much bigger areas to color, or a sky. It probably wouldn't work on a sky either, because the limit between the BG45 and the BG10 is very, it's a little bit harder to blend. I also go over this coloring a couple of times just because I really felt I needed to do that to make extra layers. Because when I make extra layers, I don't do, like I do first, my first layer is from dark to light. When I'm doing my second layer, I make sure to overlap the colors. So I extend the darks a little bit, I extend the midtones a little bit over the lights. So I usually leave a little bit more highlights than I'm thinking that I'm going to have in the end on the first layer, so that I have a little space to go over with the second layer. And the second layer, because I overlap, I will get, instead of 3 different colors blending together, I will get like 5 different colors, 6 different colors blending together. So it makes a bigger variation in colors and makes it look a little bit more blended. So yeah, that is how I work when I work with these kind of colors that are harder to blend. I do put shadows underneath arms, in creases, wherever things are overlapping, I put shadows. There is a few things I do. For example, on her boobs, I actually left a teeny tiny lighter line where the boob meets the arm on the left side, so that the boob kind of stands out a little bit more, and gives that little bit of extra difference between the arm and the boob, which is also called reflective light because you can use it as that. And with reflective light, in this case, I'm just using a very neutral color scheme and have a white background, so all the shadows is based on that. But you could actually add other colors into those reflective light, colors that matches, for example, if you're using doing a scene where you have green grass, that little reflected light might be a little bit green, stuff like that. Stuff like that. You know me, I always talk about all of these things in these videos, and hopefully you pick something up. I hope I make sense. I really do. But yeah, the second layer, I am a little bit careful with the shadows so they don't overpower, and I'm really happy about that. I actually went in with a second layer because I really wanted to get that BG45 to pop a little bit more. And when you blend with lighter colors on top of a darker color, you will be pushing that pigment deeper into the paper, so it actually ended up being a little bit lighter the first time around than I wanted. So I'm really happy to be able to go in with a second layer. How many layers you can add with Copics is very dependent on which kind of cardstock that you uses. I use the Make It color blending cardstock. I buy it from the UK. There's a link in the description down below to where you actually can get it from. But if you are from the US, maybe the postage will be too expensive. Then there are other paper types, like for example hammermill is supposed to be awesome, which I'm going to try to pick up when I go there the next time, so that I can try it, so I really can tell you if I like it or not, and also if it works with the way I color, because that is the thing. I've been using the Make It Color blending cardstock for years now, and I buy a 50 pack and a 25 pack because that kind of sits within the postage, so that I can kind of afford it postage wise. I actually contacted her and talked to her about buying a bigger stack. However, the postage would end up being hilarious. She was really nice and actually went and checked that for me. She's an awesome person. She's Marker Geek, both at YouTube and Instagram. I think she also have a blog. So if you're not following her, you really should. And she also do like these real-time coloring videos. So yeah. Anyhow, I buy them in bulk, as many as I can at one time, and then I'm just use them. And by buying that many, I don't have to worry about running out, and therefore I get a little bit more freedom because I can print a lot more images, and then I can just choose from the one I printed when I feel like it, and I don't feel like I need to color these images up because I did print them. But yeah, this cardstock is very dense. You can color on cardstock like Neenah, and I do that when I'm doing cardstock and when I do Copic together with pencils. When I'm doing that kind of art, then I use the Neenah. However, the Neenah is not as a dense paper, it's more porous, and because of that the paint will not only spread into the paper, also sidewise. So after a layer, maybe two, you start getting feathering on the sides of your images, and that is not so much fun. So the paper does a big difference. This paper is similar to the Expressit. It's not, I think the Expressit is a little bit denser than this is, and therefore it is harder to blend on it than on this. Neenah is pretty easy to blend on, but it's very hard to get details on, and also you need to use quite a lot of ink to actually do the blending, and you do want to do it in smaller pieces. But yeah, so there's a lot of different cardstocks, and I think you should try a couple of them to kind of see which is the one you want to work with. But if you have any kind of work the way I do, then the Copic blending cardstock could be really good. So after coloring her clothing, I have gone on to go with the spire and the kind of golden details on the crown. I'm using the same, I think the same yellows that I used for Alwina, because I wanted them to be very similar, so they could kind of be a set together. So I'm using the Y21 and Y26. However, I'm not glitterifying Venora. I was considering it for a short time, but it is 30 degrees outside and I needed to get this video out and make the card. I've basically just been either spending the time in the office that actually got AC, or just binging out doing cross stitch because it's too hot to do anything. Really like my evening walks though, like late evenings. We go out at 9-10 in the evening. In Sweden that means that it's still light outside. The sun sets around 10, 10:30, somewhere around there. It starts setting. So I've been out walking that time because then it's like 20 degrees outside and I'm not burning up anymore. And by the way, I have a photo of a beautiful sunset that I took on our walk yesterday on my Instagram, and that is not my card Instagram. I have split them, so if you want to see all my crafting and not just my cards, you should come following on marika.gevalli. I will be linking it in the description down below, so that you can kind of join me in there and follow me there if you want to. I'm still Craft-A-Bit Creations for all the card making, and this is just to make it easier for people who just want to see card making and card making related posts. So I'm kind of switching that out. But if you want to see that sunset, go over to marika.gevalli at Instagram. So this time around, when I'm doing the gold pieces, I'm a little bit more careful on how I color, and I'm doing a little bit more blending with the Y21, and this is mostly because I'm not glittifying Venora, and but as you can see, when I'm blending it, I'm not blending in it all the way to the lightest part, and this is because then it looks like I've used 3 pens and not 2 on the golden parts. And as you see, yellow can be used as golden parts. I also have a couple of cards. I think I made videos on them. If I did, I will link it in the description down below, where I actually used the browns, the my favorite, the E44s or the E40s, to make like golden details on some mermaids for Little Miss Muffet stamps. That was the card. That was a lot of fun. I really want to get back into playing with those kind of stamps because I really enjoyed it. I just haven't had time lately, but I'm coming there. I'm just gonna get rid of this cold that I've been fighting with for a couple of months. Yeah, months. When I've done the gold details, I went in with the mid-tones of the E40s just for that little leather pouch, and that when it dries, it actually lightens up a little bit, so it actually fits pretty good in there. I just wanted to have that, have it in leather because it really looks like leather. Also, I'm not giving her socks. Usually if you look at this image, just reminds me of the clothing of like old Swedish kings from like the 1400th century. I have no clue, you know, like when things came out, but it's like old, and the Swedish kings had all of these like little things on their pants, and short pants showing white stockings and all these little golden details, but I didn't want to have her have white stockings, so she's actually getting bare legs, so I'm just doing all of her skin in my kind of chosen color scheme, or my ordinary kind of, this is what I use to color skin with pens, my default ones. Mostly because, again, I really wanted Alwina and Venora to be sisters. I am considering doing Esmeralda too. However, Esmeralda's dress have a lot of pointed parts that really makes it look very much Halloween-y. But maybe I could make her look like the kind of evil sister or something. We'll see. We'll see. I hope you are liking this little mini-series of stamps, because I am. I'm really enjoying doing these different characters. But the skin is the E50, E00, E21, E11 and E04, and I'm so happy I switched out the nib on my E11. I have had my E11 for a very long time, and after a while, when you use it a lot, the tip starts to bead. You get like this little bead shape on it. And on this on the previous nib, this is a new nib, but on the previous nib, I ended up cutting away that bead because it started to really affect my coloring, and when I did, I cut a little bit too much, so my E11 has been not as pointy as I've been wanting it, meaning that I've gotten pretty much thicker lines just because I can't get it, as it didn't have that super sharp thing. So I actually have bought replacement nibs. I do that a couple of times a year. I buy new replacement nibs, and then I don't switch them on all my markers, absolutely not. Instead, when I'm doing kind of a refill cleaning, I look at the nibs and look if some of them has starting to get those kind of beads, and if they have those beads, I actually switch them out, because cutting the bead off didn't really make it better. Also, they're pretty newly refilled, all of them. I got some more of the refillers, what's it called? I don't remember, but the Copic refills, they have a lot of them. I went through all my markers and I weighed all my markers, and I haven't weighed them again, so I need to clean them and I need to refill them probably soon. But yeah, refilling them is so much cheaper than buying new ones, and if you feel like your nibs isn't really working, just switch out the nibs. There's also one smaller brush nib that actually fits for where you have the broad nib, so if you're not doing any kind of airbrushing, you can always change that nib into the smaller brush nib if you want to. There's also a bullet nib I think you can switch out, but I'm not sure. Anyhow, doing the cheeks and the lips, I'm actually adding a lot of pink, as you see. This is another color that actually will kind of, when it dries, go a little bit deeper, but also I really like giving them really, really bright cheeks and lips, because it makes them girly and cute and happy. But yeah, for her hair, I'm sorry, her eyes, the coloring of her eyes disappeared because my camera turns off after I think like 29 minutes. Apparently you have to tax video cameras differently than photographic cameras, and the difference with that is 30 minutes. If you can record more than 30 minutes at a time, you need to pay other taxes, because then it's not counted as a camera for photographs anymore, but a camera for video. Who knew? So my camera turns off after 30 minutes. Often though, many cameras aren't fully made for recording, especially a long period of time. So if you have cheaper cameras that you photographic cameras that you use for video recording, and they have shorter times before they turn off, usually they turn off because they have a specific time before they start getting overheated. But yeah, in my case, it's apparently the tax laws that makes that happen. So yeah, the first part of the coloring actually took over 30 minutes. However, I do cut away all the pens and all of those things, and therefore the pen changes, the video ends up being a little bit shorter. So for her hair, again, I wanted her to match her sister Alwina, so she is very, very lightly blonde. And I'm using the E40, E43, 42, 41 and 40. However, I am leaving a little bit of white, so that the really highlighted highlights are actually white. This is the only time I leave white highlights on hair. That is when I do platinum blonde hair, because that gives me a extra color to work with. None of the E series, well, the only E series that actually very, very light is the E double 000 and E000. However, they're very pink, and I'm not liking that as a hair. So my favorite is the E42 for like ashen / platinum blonde. Really enjoy that. Really enjoyed that. Anyhow, for the last part, I'm actually adding a little bit of shading to those wings. I'm using the E41 as my first step, and then just to get it a little bit more creamy, I'm using the E50 on top of that, and that was all the coloring of that image. I hope you like this video. If you do, please thumbs it up, it means a lot to me. If you have any questions, just comment down below. Down below you find all the details and everything. And here are the card making video and some other videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye!